Before we get into this episode, if you've been listening to Wind the Q and getting something out of it, we appreciate it. And if you want to support the show, we've got a monthly support option set up through the link in the description. If not, just listening and sharing goes a long way. All right, let's get to it. You ever sit at the kitchen table early in the shift? You've got your coffee in your hand, just kind of easing into the day. Nobody's really talking much yet. It's just that quiet moment where everybody's waking up and settling in. It's the same rhythm every shift. Gear checks, the normal conversation. Somebody's half watching the TV, and somebody else is staring into a cup of coffee like it owes them answers. Nothing's urgent, nothing's pressing. It's just the normal start. Then out of nowhere, somebody says something that doesn't sound important at all. Hey, I heard something earlier. And it doesn't hit loud. It doesn't demand attention, but it lands. Nobody reacts immediately. That's the part that people miss. It just hangs there for a second. But in that second, everybody heard it. Everybody processed it. And if you've been around long enough, you already know what's about to happen. You don't react to what was said. You react to what it's going to turn into. Because you've seen this scenario way too many times.
Boots hit the floor. Jump in our gear. Mask, gloves, door, screaming down the street.
Welcome to Wind the Q, the Stories Behind the Sirens. I'm Lieutenant Dodson, Engine Officer here in Northwest Georgia. This podcast is about real conversations in the fire service. It's about the job, it's about the brotherhood, and the lessons that we learn along the way. Today we're talking about something that exists in every single firehouse. It doesn't matter if you're a volunteer station, career station, combination station, it happens in every station, every shift, at every kitchen table. Whether people admit to it or not, and that is rumors. But we're not just talking about rumors as just normal idle conversation. We're breaking it down about how they actually function inside a crew environment. How they take shape, how they influence the way people think and operate before anything has even actually happened. This isn't just about people talking. This is about perception, about trust, and about mindset. It's about how quickly a crew can shift mentally based on something that hasn't even been confirmed. And when that shift happens early, it carries through that entire day. This episode isn't about stopping conversation. That's unrealistic. This is about understanding the mechanism behind it so you can recognize it early and keep it from affecting your crew in a way that really matters. So let's talk about how this starts. So rumors don't start the way people think they do. They don't come in loud and confident. They don't show up with structure. They're not certain. They come in small, almost like they don't matter, almost like they're just passing through the room. That's what makes them effective. They don't demand attention. They just slip into it. I heard, somebody said, they might be. That's it. No details, no confirmation. Just enough to exist. And what happened next is always the same. Nobody immediately reacts. It just kind of sits there. It lingers. And at that moment, the pause is where the real decision happens. Not out loud, but internally. Everyone's asking themselves the same question. Is this something real, or is this something that just fades out? Then somebody asks the question that determines everything. Where did you hear that at? That question decides whether this rumor dies or it keeps moving and building momentum. And most of the time, it moves. So let's talk about how it spreads. Once it leaves that table, then it's no longer controlled. It doesn't move in a straight line. It spreads outward multiple directions at the same time. One person mentions it just in passing. Another repeats it, and before long it's showing up in conversations that have nothing to do with where this started. The key thing to understand is that nobody thinks they're spreading a rumor. They believe they're sharing useful, valid information. They think they're helping others stay informed, but what they're actually passing along isn't information at all. It's just an interpretation, an opinion. and interpretation changes every time it's repeated. Maybe just a word gets adjusted. Maybe a tone shifts just slightly. Confidence increases just a little bit, and those small changes don't seem like much in the moment, but they stack up over time. That's how something that started small begins to take on a different shape. It begins to build momentum as it moves forward. As it continues to move, it starts to evolve into something more defined. People continue adding things to it. And they may not do this intentionally, but it just kind of naturally happens. So they fill in gaps and they connect ideas and they shape it into something that makes more sense to them. That's where it becomes intention influenced or opinion influenced. What started as a possibility begins to sound like a probability. Then it starts sounding like a plan. Eventually, it sounds like something that's already been decided, and nobody can point to the exact moment that happened. Because it didn't happen all at once. It happened in small, gradual steps. Each person added something that made it feel more complete. And by the time it reaches that point, it no longer feels like speculation, like it feels real. At a certain point, it stops being loose information and it becomes a story. Stories are powerful because they feel complete. They have structure. They take us in a direction. They make sense, even when they're built on incomplete information. People don't like gaps, so we fill them up. We've talked about this in other episodes where the stories of the traumatic calls, if we don't give at least some basis of information, then people build out these stories themselves. Same thing with a rumor. If there's a gap there, that gap will get filled in, maybe by opinion. So that's dangerous. People connect details that may not actually even be connected at all. They can create conclusions that feel logical, and once that happens, the information becomes easier to remember and easier to repeat, and that's when this rumor starts to stick. Because it's not just something that was heard, it's something that makes sense. And once something makes sense to somebody, they stop questioning it the same way. So this is where things really start to change. Because once people believe the story, they stop treating it like something they heard, and they start treating it like something they know. And there's a big difference between those two. When someone says, "I heard," there's still a little room there for some doubt. But when somebody says, "I know," that doubt disappears, even if it shouldn't. You'll hear it in the way the conversation shifts. Early on, kind of sounds cautious. But later on, as the story builds and it shifts and it gains momentum, it starts to sound a little more confident. And that confidence spreads just like the rumor did itself. It reinforces itself. I've seen guys repeat something enough times that it becomes their truth, even if it didn't really start out that way. Not because they're trying to mislead anybody, but because repetition builds belief. The more something is said, the more familiar it feels. And the more familiar it feels, the more real it becomes. At that point, it's no longer about verifying information. It's about defending it. And once people start defending something, it becomes much harder to change. There's always a moment where it comes back around. So you hear it later in the shift. Maybe you're in the bay or maybe in a different room and it doesn't sound the same anymore. It sounds stronger, sounds more detailed, more certain. And you immediately recognize it, not because it's accurate, because you remember where it started. In that moment, it can be frustrating because you know it's changed. You know it's not what was originally said, but now it's grown past that point and it's moved beyond its starting place and it's starting to take on a life of its own. It's starting to build momentum like a snowball rolling down a hill. And now you're faced with a decision. Do you step in and do you try to correct it, knowing it may not go anywhere? Or do you let it move and focus on keeping your crew grounded? Because at this point, you're not correcting information anymore, you're challenging belief. Belief is much harder to adjust. So let's talk about how this impacts your crew, because that's what matters. This is not just talk anymore, it's starting to affect people. You have guys showing up already frustrated when they walk in the door, already distracted, already forming opinions about something that's not even been confirmed yet. And that mindset carries into everything else that they do. You can feel it in the room. The conversations are shorter, the tone is different, the energy shifts just enough that you notice it. It may not be obvious to everyone, but if you're paying attention, it stands out. And as an officer, this is where your role starts to change. You're no longer just managing tasks and preparing for calls. You're managing a mindset. You're trying to keep your crew focused on what matters, even when something else is trying to pull their attention away. And that's not easy, because you're working against something that feels real to them, even if you know it's not. And here's the part that doesn't always get talked about. The effect doesn't stop at conversation. It changes behavior. You'll start to see it in little small ways at first. Guys may be quieter than usual. Someone who normally jokes around isn't engaging the same way. Another guy's more short-tempered than he usually is. Nobody connects it out loud, but it's there. It may be underlined, but you can sense it. And if you're paying attention, you realize something very important. This isn't about the rumor itself anymore. It's about what people think it means. Because people don't react to information. They react to what they believe that information is going to lead to. Now, if you've got people anticipating problems that don't even exist yet, you've got guys mentally preparing for something that may never happen. And that mental shift pulls them out of the present moment. That's the real impact of all of this. Rumors can create division between crews, between shifts, within the department. As a rumor continues to move, it starts to divide. Different people hear different versions. Those versions lead to different interpretations and different opinions. One group might believe one outcome while another group believes something completely different. And now you have a crew that's not aligned. You have shifts on different paths, and it splits your department. That lack of alignment shows up in subtle ways at first, like conversations become fragmented. People stop engaging the same way. We have a bench in our bay, and that is where shift change happens. That's where the conversations happen and the pass off of information happens. And you'll notice that people stop coming around. They stop sharing, they're quiet. That's how this happens. There's a disconnect there. It didn't exist before. Then it becomes more noticeable. Communication starts to break down. Trust starts to slip. People begin to operate based on their assumptions instead of this shared understanding. And all of it came from something that was never even confirmed in the first place. That's what makes this dangerous. It's not just the rumor itself. It's what it does to the cohesion of the crew. As that mindset spreads, it starts separating people without anyone even really realizing it. You'll have one group that's convinced something is happening and already frustrated about it. Another group that's unsure but leaning toward believing it. And another group that doesn't fully buy into it but still hears it enough that it kind of sits in the back of their mind. Now you've got three different perspectives inside the same crew, and that's where that whole disconnect starts to take shape. Because now conversations aren't based on this shared understanding. They're based on individual interpretation. When that happens, people stop operating as one cohesive unit and they start reacting as individuals. That's a problem in this job. We don't do anything as individuals. We do it as crews. We do it as pairs. So that's a problem. When things actually matter, you don't want three different mindsets. You want one mindset working in unison together. So why does this even actually happen? It's not really about gossip. It's about uncertainty. In this job, there's a lot that people don't control. Decisions get made at levels they're not a part of. Changes happen without full visibility or transparency. And when something gets mentioned, even loosely, everybody tries to make sense of it. They try to create clarity where there may be none. Sometimes that clarity is built on an assumption instead of facts. But uncertainty is uncomfortable. We see that and feel that in our jobs every shift. People don't like sitting in not knowing. So they fill in the gaps with what feels logical and what feels familiar or what they've seen before. And that process is what drives rumors forward. It's not intent, it's not malice, it's just the need to understand something that's not been fully explained yet. Another reason this happens is because people naturally try to predict outcomes. We see this also. We get into a truck and go to a specific call. We start trying to game plan that call, and when we get there, it may be totally different than what we anticipated. In this job, experience teaches us patterns. You've seen decisions before. You've seen how things usually play out. So when something gets mentioned, your brain starts connecting that to these past experiences that you've had. Well, last time they talked about this, it turned into that. And now you're not just reacting to what was said, you're reacting to what you think is coming next. You're, in your mind, you're predicting the outcome, and you're trying to act in that manner. That's where assumption starts to take over. And once assumption takes over, it starts filling in gaps faster than facts ever could. Because facts take time. Assumptions are immediate. They happen instantly. So we've talked all about rumors. But rumors are not always bad or always negative. Let's talk about some things that don't get talked about enough. Sometimes rumors reveal something very important. If the same topic keeps coming up, there's usually a reason for that. It may not be accurate in detail, but it points to something people are thinking about or concerned about. It can highlight issues that were not being addressed directly. It can show where communication is lacking. It can reveal gaps in understanding. But the key is recognizing the difference between concern and assumption. Talking about something because it matters is way different than deciding something is true without confirmation. And that line's where things either stay productive or they start becoming a problem. There's also another side of this that is also worth paying attention to. Sometimes rumors gain traction because there's a lack of communication somewhere. People don't just make things up out of nowhere. Most of the time, something triggered it. Maybe it's a conversation or a change or a decision that wasn't fully explained. And when there's a gap in understanding, like we said, we fill that gap in. So instead of just looking at rumors as a problem, sometimes it may be worth asking, what is this pointing to? Is there something people don't understand? Is there something that hasn't been communicated clearly to everybody? Because sometimes what you're hearing isn't just noise, it's feedback, just not delivered in the normal structured way. So what can we do about all of this? We've talked about the good side and the bad side of rumors and how they may be positive or negative, but what can we do about them? You can't stop people from talking. That's not even realistic. But you can control how you handle what you hear. If you don't know, don't repeat it. If you didn't hear it from a reliable, credible source, don't present it like you did. If it matters, go find the answer instead of just building one, instead of filling in the gap or fabricating an answer. It's okay to say, I'm not sure, but let me go find out. If something sounds off, don't add to it just to keep the conversation going. Because every time you add to it, even in a small way, you're still helping it grow. And once it grows, it becomes harder and harder to manage. Control doesn't come from stopping it. It comes from not feeding it. Control also comes from how you respond in the moment. We talked about this with Clay Willis. All we can do, all we're responsible for is how we respond to a comment or a situation. That is all we can control. You don't have to shut conversations down aggressively. They usually don't work anyway, but you can slow things down with simple questions like, do we actually know that? Or where did that come from? There's some people that if I say, where did that come from, and their name's mentioned, I know immediately it's probably not true. Or has that even been confirmed? Those questions don't attack anybody, but they introduce a pause. That pause is what prevents things from accelerating. Because once something starts picking up speed, it's hard to slow down. But if you can catch it early and create just a moment of hesitation, you can keep it from turning into something bigger. That is the control. So let's talk about the personal check. And this is a part that we don't like to admit. But everybody's been part of it. So at some point, We've all repeated something that we didn't verify. Everybody has added their own interpretation to something they heard, and it don't come from a bad place. It comes from the same place everything else does. We're just trying to understand what's going on. But recognizing that is the important part, because once you realize how easy it is to contribute to it, you become more aware of how you handle it moving forward. It's not about being perfect. It's about being intentional in what you're doing and what you're saying. It's about knowing when to speak. It's about knowing when to question and when to let something go instead of just passing it along. And if you really want to be honest about it, the easiest way to manage this isn't by focusing in on everybody else. It's about focusing on yourself. Because every rumor that spreads is made up of multiple small little contributions along the way. And every one of those contributions came from somebody who probably didn't think it mattered, but it does. So the real question isn't just, why does this happen? Or what role do I play in this? Am I passing things along without thinking about it? Am I adding to something just to stay in the conversation? Or am I the one slowing it down? That's where it actually changes. So at the end of the day, this is part of the firehouse. It always has been. It probably always will be. The difference is in how it's handled. You can be a part of what keeps it moving, or you can be a part of what slows it down. You can add to it, or you can question it. You can let it shape your mindset, or you can stay grounded in what is actually real. Because this job already comes with enough weight. The last thing you need to carry is something that was never real to begin with. And to go along with that today, I've got 4 scriptures that I would like to read that may help somebody. I'll read the scriptures back to back, and then we'll talk about them. But Leviticus 19:16 says, "Thou shalt not go up and down as a talebearer among thy people. Neither shalt thou stand against the blood of thy neighbor. I am the Lord." And the next one is over in Proverbs. It'll be Proverbs chapter 16, verse 28. And it says, "A froward man soweth strife, and a whisperer separateth chief friends." The third one is in Ephesians chapter 4, verse 29. And it says, "Let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth, but that which is good to the use of edifying, that it may minister grace unto the hearers." And then the very last one is in James. And I've mentioned before how much I like the book of James, because he's straight and he's to the point. But in chapter 3, verses 5 and 6, it says, "Even so the tongue is a little member, and boasteth great things. Behold, how great a matter a little fire kindleth. And the tongue is a fire, a world of iniquity. So is the tongue among our members, that it defileth the whole body, and setteth on fire the course of nature. And it is set on fire of hell." And as I thought about this episode in this scripture, every fire we run starts with a spark, or a small, tiny ember. And every fire that we run has the potential to be a huge fire. We're what stops that, and we interrupt that reaction. And that's what keeps that fire from growing any further. It's up to us, when the rumor mill starts, to stop that, to get the facts, to not worry about things that have not even been confirmed. We don't even know if they're true or not. Don't get hung up on those things. And think about how small the tongue is, but how much damage it can do. It can tear apart friendships and relationships, and the fire service is known for its gossip and rumors. So think about that the next time. I just wanted to leave that with you today. Thank you for listening to Wind the Q. Stay safe, take care of your crew, and take care of yourself.
Boots hit the floor. Jump in our gear. Mask, gloves, door, screaming down the street.
Before we wrap up, if you've gotten value out of this podcast, if it's something that you listen to, that you share, and that you believe in, then there's a way to support it directly. We've set up a monthly support option through Buzzsprout, and that link is in the description. Everything that goes into this, the time, the equipment, the production, it all adds up. And that support helps us keep this thing moving forward and growing. If that's something that you want to be a part of, we appreciate it. And if not, just keep listening, sharing it, send it to your crew. That matters just as much, but we appreciate all of it.